All right. Good afternoon, Grizzlies, or morning. I don't know, evening, whatever time it is there for you. Sorry I'm not there today. I'm in a district training. I hope that you have a wonderful day today. And let me explain to you your assignment for today. So, what you're going to do is the substitute should have given you a reading. Each of you get your own individual sheet about 14 quotes that come from the autobiography of Dr. King. Now, if you want the entire reading, it is 32 pages long, but the sub has a few copies for you. It comes from the first 5 chapters of Dr. King's autobiography. Okay. And what you're going to do, this is an assignment that's due on Monday. You're going to do the 3-2-1. Okay. And you can just use the quotes, but if you want more, go ahead and grab the reading there. This is one of my favorite books, autobiographies about Dr. King. Okay. You also will notice that there's an extra credit assignment due that same day with the Breaking the Silence reading. So on Monday, I gave you that reading. It's gonna be what we discussed on Friday. Okay, so do that reading and do the extra credit if you want to. Okay, but you don't have to, certainly. But so what you're gonna do, okay, is I want each one of you to individually read all of those quotes and pull out some of the things and ideas that you like about them. But there's two that I want to pull to make you aware of and add a little bit of commentary. So the first one is your very first one, where Dr. King is going to talk about he's sitting around the dinner table. Now, the part that I cut out for you. The part that's cut out, and again, you can read the whole thing if you want to, starts with this. So, Dr. King, he grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. His father was a famous preacher, and uh, for African Americans at the time, he would probably be considered kind of upper middle class. Now, for general population in the United States, he was relatively poor. Okay, but because he had that wealth and his dad was a famous preacher, he was able to live in a little bit nicer part of town. Okay, and I went to and visited his house in Atlanta, which was really cool, and I can tell you some stories about going there. But his best friend when he was a child was a little boy whose dad owned a gas station or grocery store down the street from where he lived, and his best friend as a child was a white boy. Well, maybe not his best friend, but he had a friend, okay, who was a white boy, and they just played together every day. And he didn't understand this concept of what race or racism was. It was his friend. And anyways, when he reached the age of 5, his friend told him, um, I can't be your friend anymore. My dad says I can't play with you anymore and that I'm going to be going to a separate school from you. And Dr. King was like, why? Why can't you play with me? And the friend says, well, it's my daddy says it's because you're black and I can't play with black kids. And so Dr. King was like, really? Like, why can't you be my friend anymore? He was so confused, this little 5-year-old. And so he went home and told his parents about what had happened. And this is where that quote gets in. So he says that he was sitting at the dinner table, and I should have brought the reading with me home. I apologize. I'm doing this pretty much from memory. But he says that it was in that moment when his parents explained to him the history of racism, okay, and that even they had experienced some of those things, okay. And at the age of 5, being super confused about, really, like, how am I any different? And this is something that is called the talk, right? This talk where kids are told this is kind of some of the terrible things that have happened. Okay, in that to talk about racism, and I want you to read Dr. King's response. Okay, in that moment, he said he was angry. Okay, he was angry, and he was angry at white people, and that as he got older, this anger only grew and intensified, and that his parents said, no, you need to love the white man because it's your Christian duty. But he says he never could understand. And the quote I want you to highlight there is this quote of, how could I love a race that hated me? And so I want you to start with this question of Dr. King as a little boy, and even more as he grew up as a teenager, he hated white people. He said it right there in his autobiography. That's page 3 or 2 of his autobiography. This doesn't sound like the King that I grew up learning about in my history classes. Because I always thought King was like, hey, we should dream this big dream and treat everyone equal and judge by the character of content of your character, not the color of their skin, right? And collaborate and work in a nonviolent way with white people. Like, how did Dr. King go from this teenager who hated white people to leading this nonviolent movement? Something must have happened in his life. Okay. And that's the story you are going to try and read today. Okay. Of him going from not liking white people to leading this movement. How did that happen? Okay. And what is the process of gaining? And here's the key word I want you to look at, this process of gaining self respect. Okay. Because this first unit that we're looking at is all about self respect. So, how did Dr. King grow in his understanding of race? Okay. And the chapters you're going to look at are his early life, and then him going to college, and getting his PhD, and truly growing from the age of essentially 5 to 27. Okay. That's what these 33 pages that you're going to read, or just these quotes are going to read. So have a discussion about how did he change. Okay. Now, there's going to be one quote, and this is one I don't know how much you're going to get into this one. It is a bit academic, but I want you to go to it because it's, of these quotes, my favorite. Okay. So flip through your reading, and it's the one that talks about liberalism. Okay. Liberalism. So basically, what King is doing is he's framing how he had an academic perspective of race. Okay, so what we have is we have this continuum, we have this binary. On one side, and it still exists today, is he calls fundamentalism. Okay, and he's going to talk about the danger of fundamentalism. Now, fundamentalism is not a word we use anymore. Instead, we use conservatism. Okay, so on one side, we have conservatives. And Dr. King, believe it or not, was raised as a conservative. Okay, now on the other side is liberalism. Okay, and liberalism, we still use that word today. This is liberals. Okay, and he was raised in this conservative household. But then when he went to college, he went to a liberal school, and he's going to talk about what he loved about liberalism. Okay. And the thing he loved about liberalism is this idea of questioning. Okay. But he says the danger of liberalism, right? And so that's the quote. So, if you want to, in your notes, kind of draw this continuum, okay, because there are pitfalls of living a conservative lifestyle, but there are also pitfalls of living a liberal lifestyle. Now, he kind of alludes to this, but I'm going to speak to a little bit because I'm kind of that same way. I was raised fairly conservative, although I did have some liberal upbringing as well. And then I went to a pretty liberal institution. Okay. And so I found some relatability with Dr. King. So the danger of liberalism, and again, I wish I had the reading, so I'm going to do it off of memory, but he basically says that the danger of liberalism is the tendency to accept everything and he uses the word sin. Okay. And so basically he's saying that liberals, the danger of being a liberal is that you are so accepting that you accept everything because you believe, well, there is no sin, there is no right and wrong, so just accept everything. Okay. And that can be a little bit dangerous because there is right and wrong. But liberals tend to just say, well, we need to accept everyone. Okay. So he says there's maybe a limit. Now, on the other side is the fundamental, okay? And or the conservative. And the conservative is this, where liberals say there is no sin, thus accept everyone and don't change because I'm going to accept everyone and we're not going to improve. You could argue that. Well, conservatives will say there is only sin and that everyone else is sinning except me. And there is a self-righteousness to this, right? And so where liberals fall into the pitfall of accepting everyone, thus we don't need to change, conservatives will say everyone else is evil, I am good, so thus I don't need to change, right? And so it's this pitfall of going again to the extremes. So here's what I would recommend you do, okay? Wherever you are on that continuum, find where you are and put in a stake and say, "This is me." Okay, that's kind of that conservative stand your ground, right? Because there is value in believing what you believe. Okay, and there is self-respect in that. Okay, but conservatives tend to say, "This is who I am, and I will not change. Accept me for who I am because I'm never going to change." But liberals, they like this idea of questioning. Okay, not that conservatives don't, but there's that pitfall. And so what I recommend is wherever you are on that continuum, put in your stake. This is what I believe. And then take a small little tether and research and study and see different perspectives. And if you start to see yourself being pulled more liberal, pick up your self respect, pick up your beliefs, and move it just a little, and then replant it. And then do a little bit of asking. And if you're like, ooh, maybe this is a little too far, move back and restate. And I can tell you, when I was in college, I was so confused about what I believed and didn't believe because I kind of lost my sense of who I was and I'm going to use self respect. Okay. And if you're like, I don't know what my beliefs are, it's probably your parents. And your parents, they've taught you good things. But it's time for you to use that liberal questioning both sides. Okay. And some of you will realize in this course, maybe I'm a little bit too extreme. I need to maybe become a little bit more liberal. And maybe some of you are saying, oh, I'm a little too liberal. I need to maybe be a little bit more conservative. Okay. And be free and willing to change. But the key part is first, you need to believe in what you believe. Okay. One of my favorite ideas is this idea of doubt your doubts before you doubt your beliefs. Okay. And that's just, to me, that quote from Dr. King, that's what I took from it. Okay. The rest of it, though, you take it the way you want. And if you want to disagree with me about liberalism and conservatism, go right ahead. Okay. So take each of these quotes, have a discussion with the main idea being, how did Dr. King grow in his self respect? And in him growing in his self respect, how did he become more accepting and inclusive, which allowed him to then lead this national movement and ultimately change the world? So hopefully you enjoyed today. I really wish I was there with you to have this conversation. But we'll see you on Friday. So with that, you're wonderful. Love you. Go Utes.